Hundreds of South Korean protesters gathered outside the parliament Tuesday night, braving the frigid winter conditions to voice their opposition to the president's martial law. And when the mandate was lifted 6 hours later, following a parliamentary veto, much celebration broke out among the people. We have more in Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Friday, December 6th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. A significant portion of the foreign media coverage about Korea's short-lived martial law placed focus on the prompt public response to the president's declaration. For more on this, I have Celio Fioretti for French daily La Croix here in the studio. Celio, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with us. Colin, as always, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Right, Celio. As we can see, international media coverage about Korea's short-lived martial law continues. And one American publication, I believe, shed light on the Korean public's resolve against the president's mandate. Let's start off with that coverage, Celia.
Indeed, there was a swift response by the opposition and the civil society. 12 minutes after Yoon Suk-yeol announced the martial law, the leader of the Democratic Party called for the lawmakers to urge to the National Assembly and to vote against the martial law. The move was ardently followed not only by politicians but also the civil society. A huge crowd gathered in front of the gates of the National Assembly that was closed off by the army at the moment. Yoon sought to use the South Korean army to prevent the National Assembly to vote against his martial law, but protesters formed a human chain in front of the gates to barricade the building against the army. I was there on the ground reporting on that night, and I was quite surprised to see as much organization by the protesters. It all came so quickly and so well organized and quite peacefully also. All the protesters were ready with flags, speakers. Everything was set almost if it was planned before, but thankfully everything was here to show the public opposition to this military force. And after the martial law was lifted early in the morning, the situation went calm. The army retreated, and you can still see even today in all the streets in Korea, there are still protests going on, asking for consequences for this martial law and asking the president to go out of the office. A young student that I met there Tuesday night told me he heard many stories from previous students because he's from Yonsei, which was really famous in the 80s for protesting, and he felt it was a sort of sense of duty for him as a Yonsei student, as a Korean, to go there and protest against this oppressive regime.
And Colin, speaking within your capacity as a foreign resident here in South Korea, what were some of your takeaways with regard to the immediate public response to the brief imposition of martial law here in the country?
Well, I'm always impressed in 21st century Korea how quick people are to make memes on the internet, to make and circulate these humorous images. One notable example was the poster for the movie Seoul, which came out last year. It's now winning a lot of awards. This film, as viewers may know, a very thinly veiled dramatization of the 1979 military coup here in Korea, led by John Doo-hwan, who then became president. I think they called him John Doo-gwang or something like that in the movie. But they took the Seoul poster, which means Seoul Spring, and just sort of pasted Yoon Suk-yeol's face over the John Doo-hwan character, called it Seoul Gyeol. Seoul winter. And so you can see they were sort of not taking it all that seriously to begin with. It wasn't like, some people were afraid, I'm sure. Many were bewildered, and more were sort of ready to say, you know, what is this guy doing? You know, and this, for many Koreans, I think it was part of a pattern, the latest in a series of acts that has made them take President Yoon not as seriously as he could be taken, which began with the relocation of the presidential offices to Yongsan for reasons that some people find not especially legitimate, and this latest attempt to impose martial law, the situation also did not seem to warrant it. So something else is going on behind the scenes, clearly, but you have that on the sort of mockery side. On the other side, I saw a lot of quoting of Korea's Nobel laureate, Han Gang, and her book, Sonyeonyeonda, Human Acts, about the massacre or uprising in Gwangju in 1980, which was another incident led by President Chun Doo-hwan, sending troops into Gwangju to put down what he saw as a North Korea sympathizer agitated rebellion, which you can also draw parallels to this thankfully much less violent incident.
Right. Celio, there's also been quite a bit of media coverage about how this particular incident was also an opportunity to witness Korea's democracy in action. What has been said and how do you respond?
Indeed, the announcement sent citizens streaming to the streets on a cold December night to call for Yoon to resign and end the martial law. On Tuesday, the lawmaker clearly made also the right decision to go there and vote against that. And you can really see here the Korean spirit of fighting back oppression. Now it's true that the reaction and organization of the people, civil society, politicians was almost perfect. What can also be noted is like this in preparation from the government against that reaction from people and this attachment to democracy and the order of law and the common rights. Before the announcement, it seems not a lot of like policemen were ready, even aware of what was going. And it seems that deep down during Tuesday night, part of the army and the police, you could feel a sort of mixed feelings about this situation. They know it was not right. And it really also, I think it's important to note, like the army was not carrying live rounds there. They were not aggressively violent towards the protesters, towards the lawmakers. There was some small fights, some small hurdle, but still it seemed that really they reminded themselves, this is a democratic country and we should not act against the people. It's not our duty as a soldier to act that way. And I think that's really, if we can really emphasize that side of the story also, that really made the situation more calm and helped to de-escalate the tension that was rising and rising during the Tuesday night. Now there are rumors these days that Yoon might attempt another martial law, and today the Army Chief of Staff clearly say we will not follow any orders that could be that way, because that's not the purpose of the army right now. The purpose is to defend against foreign aggression, not to attack its own people. So I think that's, you can really see on also that way the Korean spirit and attachment to democracy.
Right, and talking about the Korean people's spirit, Colin, what more can you tell us about the atmosphere here in the country beyond, after that is, the martial law?
I think the atmosphere would surprise a lot of foreigners outside Korea. I mean, I was getting emails from friends in the US as soon as this happened, practically saying, I just woke up, do you still have the internet? Like, what's going on there? So the perception was of a much, how to put it, a crisis that affected people in a way that it actually did not so much. I mean, there were articles published the next day about how you'd go out. This was the day after martial law had been declared and repealed, but people were doing their usual. I mean, they were working, there were tourists doing their thing. It reminds me of all the articles you see about, you know, are South Koreans scared of North Korea? And the thrust is always, not really. They're not actually paying much attention to that suite of issues. Whether or not they should is a different question. But I think the mood here in South Korea is not one. It's not one of. It's not a mood of crisis, but certainly the event warrants the name, depending upon sort of how you look at it. It's not. No one's screaming in the streets, but people were screaming at the National Assembly building for one night, as far as I understand it.
Right. Celio, there are some who fear that this latest incident may negatively affect Korea's image, and this is a question that I addressed with our foreign correspondents earlier this week as well. Do you suppose this is a concern, a legit concern, that Korea's image may be affected overseas?
Definitely, definitely, and not only the media, but the general opinion about Korea. Korea has now a stained image. For the last decade, we have known Korea for K-pop, the culture, the music, the food, all those like nice postcards of the country that made it attractive to people, and many tourists came for Korea for this reason. But now I've seen on social media and people asking me also by message, is it safe? Is Korea a safe country now? So I have to remind them, like, yes, it's an incident. It's not like that every day. But still, deeper than that, I think Korea boasts about democracy, and having such an incident, which is so wrong against democracy, really hurts Korea's image. Korea now is like a democracy against all the authoritarian regime in Asia, against North Korea, of course. But now, like a sort of a military coup, it feels like we're back in the 80s, back in the 70s. It doesn't sound serious at all, especially when you consider the cause, and Colin mentioned it, the so-called North Korean forces from the inside menacing the integrity of the Republic of Korea. That doesn't sound believable. It's a bit of nonsense, and nobody really believed that from the start. So I think also what is important to note is the really disconnection between the government and the reality of the situation in Korea, which is hurtful for the whole health of the democracy here. The result of the election last year was quite clear, and the president had to manage with an assembly that's in the end of the opposition, and he really didn't adapt to this. And now it's sending a really wrong image, a wrong signal to all the foreign partners of Korea in Europe, in the US, in Asia. What is wrong with Korean democracy? It's the big question that everybody's asking now.
Right, and against this backdrop, Colin, another rather interesting American article touched upon the prospects of a similar martial law possibly being declared in the US. How do you respond to the feasibility of such a reality?
Well, I think now that Trump is back in the news, these types of articles keep coming out. Could Trump do this? Could Trump do that? If something undesirable, some undesirable political move happens in another country, the question is always, is Trump going to do that? You know, he's seen as unpredictable. So is President Yoon by some. But the difference, I mean, these two political systems are not identical to each other. And so it's always difficult to make an exact analogy between one country and the other. Martial law is enactable, as I understand it, on the state level in the US. On a federal level, on a national level, it's quite a bit murkier. The concept doesn't really apply in the same way. But if a president were to try something equivalent in the United States, as I understand it, it all hinges on the cooperation of the military. Is the military going to enforce his word or not? So, you know, in a way, it gets you wondering about the nature of the United States as a society. Does this all come down to what the military, is the military going to do what the executive wants or not? Is that the ultimate backstop? And in that case, if Trump or any other president were to try to form a sort of completely top-down command political structure, all of a sudden, it would depend on if the armies or the military as a whole is going to come in and enforce that. And I don't think they have the appetite for that. That's just my speculation, though.
Right. Celio, in light of this latest incident here in the country, international coverage of Korea, of the situation here, also includes focus on the domestic discontent in the country over housing hardships, youth unemployment, as well as, of course, the dismal birth rate. Would you like to elaborate a bit more on this?
Yeah, what happened Tuesday didn't come out of nowhere, actually. The country's politics are more and more polarized, and it's clearly haven't been taken into account and end up in this chaotic crisis that we're facing. There has been for years a growing discontent about the way things are in Korea, whether it's the birth rate, of course, but it's also hard to find a job when you're young. It's hard to make ends meet, to pay the bills at the end of the month, to buy or rent a house. There is no clear idea of what the future will be, and if you ask young people in their 20s and 30s, where will you be in 5 years? They will say abroad, and that's a big problem. The ship is sinking and people are fleeing. It's a major crisis for Korea. And what answer have we got yet? Not that much, actually, and that's a big problem. And I think you would expect politicians from both sides, left and right, to address those problems and make people want to stay in the country and make this country a better place for them. We haven't seen that. Both parties are embattled in a tit-for-tat investigation, charging accusation against one of them, sometimes like verbally violent, but also sometimes physically violent. We've seen January last year the leader of the Democratic Party getting stabbed, and other deputies from the People Power Party also getting beaten up. It's plain wrong, and it doesn't benefit the people in any case. Also, as I mentioned, Yoon barely made it at the presidential election with only 0.8% more than his opponent. So there was maybe some expectation from the general opinion to have like not a hard line, but maybe a compromise with the opposition in such a polarized country, in such a divided country. We haven't done that. We haven't got that. After the midterm election, the same thing. Yoon suffered a massive defeat and still kept with this hard line. And of course, the opposition will profit from the situation. They have the majority. But we haven't got a compromise or a way to make things work in Korea, and the people really felt like they were not listened to. They were, the government forgot about them. And the country is shaking, but nobody wants to make it work. And Tuesday, Yoon made the biggest mistake of his career. Of course, it's a sort of political suicide, but he's not the only one to blame. The whole politician class in Korea hasn't really got themselves to work and fix the problem of the country.
Right then, Colin, the political polarization that Celio just touched upon, it's not a purely Korean phenomenon. We also see it in the US as well. But do you suppose the social problems here within the country have perhaps worsened that divide?
Yeah, I do think the social polarization is a reflection of the political polarization, or a reflection of the adversarial culture in Korean politics. And that sounds a little bit, it sounds like I'm stretching it a bit, because of course every modern democracy has an adversarial political culture. You've got to have elections, you've got to have races. But at the same time, in South Korea, I don't know if it's uniquely adversarial, but it is harsh enough to the point where in any political battle, the interests of the republic never seem to come first. It's always about defeating your enemies and punishing whoever won before you. And if you're replacing somebody from the other party, you've got to undo whatever they did. And almost a culture of pure vengeance when you see it from the outside. As I said, tit for tat. It's something that makes you think when you listen to the speech, when you listen to the speech President Yoon gave to announce the imposition of martial law. He describes why he's doing it, and this has been translated into various languages now, so you can look it up in any of them. But even a Korean who believes that Yoon Suk-yeol is a bad president will have to agree when he says that he is in a position where he can't govern because of the behavior of the opposition. And I'm not saying the ruling party is any better when they're in the opposition, but this method, or the way that it's become standard practice in Korean politics to simply block everything your opponents do because they are your opponents with no higher goal in sight. I mean, this is what happens. This is what you're going to get. And unless you can fix the root of that problem, I don't think this is going to be the last incident of its kind, unfortunately.
Right. And Celio, speaking as a foreign correspondent here in the country, what do you suppose will be the focus of the international media of this country in the aftermath of its martial law?
What I already see with my media and when we talk with the newsroom in Paris, everybody's looking for Saturdays. The voting for the impeachment. Will Yoon be out of office from Saturday or not?
And for the sake of our foreign viewers, do remind us a bit about the importance of that vote. How many votes does the opposition party need to impeach the president?
So the assembly requires 200 votes to pass the impeachment. Right now, the opposition have 92, sorry, and they need 8 more votes to repass that, which will require, of course, votes from the presidential party. It remains unclear if the party will vote in or against that. Han Dong-hoon, the president of the presidential party, People Power Party, have some mixed messages. Today in the morning he said he will be in favor of the impeachment. Now he's backtracking a bit, saying it's only his opinion, not the party's opinion. So I guess the lawmakers will have their own choice to make and their own decision, what they think is right for the country, what they think is right for the party. And towards the president, of course. So the whole question tomorrow, and really the intention of the press, is will the president fall? Will Korea have to make new election in 60 days? And that's also a big question. How can the country organize new elections in such a polarized political background, as we mentioned just before? There will also be a massive protest Saturday, so we'll have to cover that, of course. But no matter the outcome of the vote, it will be a sort of stress test for Korean democracy. Can the leader who risked it all in an attempt to seize power can be just out of office without any problem? How will we face justice? What will be the consequences of his actions? And also, how can the Conservative Party detach themselves from Yoon? It was already a bit hard for them because Yoon is quite unpopular to manage to still appeal to the voters, but not being too attached to Yoon's image. And also, maybe we'll have a new scenario as we had in 2017 after Park Geun-hye was impeached. Probably the Democratic Party could win the presidential election and have a strong majority in the assembly. How will they use all of this power? There was a lot of complaint after Moon Jae-in that he was too laid back with his power after the election. So also there's the whole foreign relation aspect of it. Yoon developed a new relationship with Japan. How it will work? Democratic Party is not too keen on Japan. And there's also the issue of China, North Korea, Trump's United States, Russia now also in the play with North Korea. It's a lot of questions that will need to be answered quite quickly because the new election, if the impeachment passed through, will arrive quickly.
Right, and under this dark cloud of uncertainty, Colin, what are your hopes regarding the public's efforts to perhaps move beyond the ensuing political turmoil?
Well, briefly put, looking ahead, I think the Korean people would do well to hold their political leaders to a higher standard. And of course, if you don't like the president, whoever the president is, you're free to criticize him, and many do in Korea, but it doesn't always translate to looking back at your own guy, the leader of your own side, your own party. I think sometimes it happens in every country, but it's again a more severe problem in Korea, I would say. People will accept any leader as long as that leader opposes who they oppose, right? So yes, you might not like Yoon Suk-yeol, but okay, also think of who you favor and try to raise the bar. Try not to accept just anybody in the opposition either. That's what I would hope for, that change in attitude.
Right, I see. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this edition. As always, Colin, thank you so much for your insights. And Celio, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. Right, well, on that note, we end this week's editions of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching and be sure to join us again next Monday.